Good day and welcome to the Women Lead TV, brought to you by Connected Women of Influence. I'm Eva Venari, founder of the Elevate Institute, your host for this segment of Leading Your Health, the show that helps you take charge of your health. So many of us are leaders in every other part of our life and not this. So let's solve it. Our conversation today is with Kathy McCarty, as she is with us as a passionate educator, advocate, and founder of Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance. And she's dedicated to raising awareness about the dangers of methamphetamine contamination. Good day, Kathy. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Eva, good morning. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were introduced by a colleague, of a shared colleague, and
Hmm.
um, it wasn't obvious at first. I'm like, methamphetamine, why? What's going
Right.
on? But I mean, after just a few minutes of us chatting, I was like, wow, and the whole experience that you shared with me completely shocked me, which is very difficult to do. So I want more people to understand the dangers here that you're dealing with. And I want, that's why you're here. So let's get in. Let's talk about it. We're talking about methamphetamine contamination. How did you get into the meth business?
I get that asked a lot. How did a nice girl like me get into this topic? And it does launch from a personal story. Very briefly, I did have a major health event in early 2016, and once I navigated uh, the significance of that ultimately affected my eyes and my sight. I'm here to say I have nothing but gratitude. I drove to the location I'm at today and things like that, but once my youngest went off to college, I chose to rent out our home, which was in the foothills west of Denver, in the foothills in Evergreen, Colorado, and what seemed like a sensible solution to leverage my largest asset for just a short period of time. It was going to be for a year to offset medical costs in my next chapter. I put provisions like a property management company in place and insurances and things like that. And what seemed like a sensible solution turned into my worst nightmare when that management company did place a tenant in there. And in a very short period of time, in just less than 90 days, I learned that he consumed and manufactured methamphetamine in my home, which totaled it, destroyed it beyond repair.
That comment right there at the very end. Not that all of it isn't a horrific.
Right.
It's the what do you mean contaminated it? I thought you if you smoked it, it's just here in the body and the person who smoked it, and it's their problem. It's contained.
Right. It's not. It's what I understood looking into the sciences, and then I obviously had 100 huge hurdles, especially in those first 100 days, is to learn what methamphetamine was and how it affects our environment. Because when I went into the home, within a minute, I couldn't even be inside. My eyes burned so bad. So what I learned is that by smoking it, or manufacturing it, it leaves a residue in the environment. It's airborne, it's a petroleum product, and then it sticks and adheres to all the surfaces. Anywhere air goes is where the residue can go. And in the case of our home, it was a 1956 restored cabin, so it was all wood, very porous, and it adhered into the air ducts, into the crawl spaces, all surfaces, nooks and crannies, and could not be remediated to the state standard.
Wow. All right. So the residue is everywhere.
Right.
Um, what are the dangers? What are the dangers to you and
Sure.
being in the space? Yeah.
Great question. And depending upon the level of concentrations and the individual, I had a huge sensitivity in my eyes, my orbital areas. But I learned that it can be as mild as some itchy burning of the eyes, skin irritations, but headaches are a very common consideration when you're in a space that may be contaminated with meth. To people and individuals that I learned had upper respiratory issues, and even worse, toxicity to their major organs, like needed to go through liver and kidney detoxifications and other things, everything in between. It can be very dangerous, especially to high seniors, people at risk like myself that had other health issues, and especially our
Agree.
standards here in Colorado are around small body sizes, children, and even unborn babies, and our fur babies. Our pets. They walk around the environments, they lick their paws, they ingest it, and it can make them very sick as well.
Okay, mind is going all sorts of places.
That was a lot in a short period of time, I realized.
Yeah, no, I mean it's information that I think we need to know. I mean, I've been in the business of detoxing bodies for 14 years, and I've
Mhm.
never heard of having the toxic load due to methamphetamine residue exposure.
Mhm. And the same with me in the sense that I spent over 30 years as an affiliate in a real estate related industry as a lender and a banker, and purchased properties myself at the executive level. I trained other individuals in those types of spaces, and yet I had never even heard about meth toxins in real estate. And what I ended up learning after I sort of peeled back that type of information and talked to professionals and affiliates in those areas is that a lot of people have this misconception that it's low income, high crime, high drug use, rundown neighborhoods, and that it's found in. And yes, it may be found in some of those spaces, and it may not be, but it's also anywhere USA. Actually, meth usage is at global levels. Uh, the usage is at global levels, and there are no geographical boundaries, no community, no neighborhood is really immune. You cannot profile a particular property to know that you may not see any symptoms. Like in my home, after the person was gone and his belongings were gone, and the hazardous materials there were gone, there were really no signs that there had been drug manufacturing going on that property.
So, I mean, of all the other different ways that we can, as humans,
Right.
collect some form of toxin, now we have one more thing to think about when we
We,
move,
mhm.
or in your case, when you rent out your space. You could be exposing yourself to meth contamination. And how do we know it? Like, is there testing? What can be done? What are the things that we can do to
Protect ourselves, right,
yeah,
right, yeah,
exactly.
and prevent this. There are many things we can do to prevent it in the vetting process if we have other people in our spaces that we're either renting it out or letting people be there short or long term. And I go through a series of preventative pieces that you can put in place, protections and vetting processes and things like that I didn't realize were not protecting me. I also really want to mention real quickly, Eva, that I relied on my homeowner's policy to help protect me to try to clean all this up. And what I learned is industry wide, under residential real estate, there are exclusions in all of our policies under contaminants, and so that basically was an exclusion in my insurance policy for homeowners. I had and even the renter's endorsements and things like that I carried. And then the tenant had a policy, but because of his uh, criminal activity, it's falls under willful and wanton conduct. There's an exclusion there, and I did not have recourse in that fashion either. So through that avenue, so I wanted to let people know that. What can people do to protect themselves is depending upon how they use their space, because it can happen to people even if they don't rent a home out, a room out, even if they're not even they live alone and they don't have guests and things like that, especially if it's in a unit that may be of a multi-structure, because you can get cross contamination through anywhere where air travels. So I'm not here to be an alarmist. I'm here to let people know that this exists, and you can have properties tested. I especially believe that prior to purchasing a home, like you would do due diligence of other types of inspections, that people seek out the professionals in their areas who are certified testers. They're called industrial hygienists for meth testing. Here
Okay.
in Colorado, where I'm at, there's even a version where in a real estate transaction you can hire somebody to do a more modified version, but to hit those major key areas that these testers believe as experts are some of the places that you would want to test, like in the HVAC system, cold air returns, ventilation, and some other areas where it may be the most common, exhaust fans, things like that. And just know what you're getting into. It's not to say that at low concentrations it can't be dealt with and potentially remediated or removed to feel safe. But I believe that property owners should feel informed and have an opportunity to make those informed decisions to have it tested. There's also through the internet, you can buy a test that can be a single swab type of thing, similar to like a pregnancy test where it's going to be
Okay.
pass or fail, but it won't give you an actual number as far as a level of toxicity, but at least it'll be a pass or fail. And then you could take those next steps if you'd like.
Yeah, that would seem important. I would say, especially when you're moving into a place that you or are preparing to purchase or even
Hmm.
rent. I mean, you can have it tested for lead, you can have it tested for mold. Why not have it tested for meth?
Right. I'm here traveling right now and I'm in a room. And it's, it's like an Airbnb, VRBO and things like that. And I grew up, I'm a baby boomer, and we grew up, we weren't supposed to talk to strangers, and now we invite them to sleep in our beds. We just really don't know what's going on, and I'm very excited to even mention early. I'm in the early stages of just launching a device that was created to help detect for methamphetamine ingredients through a device. It's similar to like a smoke detector or a carbon monoxide detector, but it takes it that next level where it's a smart device and it'll actually notify you whether it's been triggered for some reason. Or actually when it's been disabled, or maybe the batteries die or things like that. So it's anti-tampering, where somebody might come into a space, know it's there, and try to turn it off, things like that. So that's a really exciting new piece of technology that is just getting here, and I'm proud to be able to represent that opportunity that next layer of prevention.
Yeah, I think that's a great product, and on the heels of your just don't talk to strangers. I grew up in the age of just don't do drugs, and it's
Just say
fun
no, right?
to say no. I think my mother was one of the founding members of one of the Los Angeles, one of the prime, groups that are like
Hmm.
Moms Against Drugs or something like that. And it's now a changed world. Oh, everybody's okay to do it. Well, these are the ramifications if you do. And the consequences are not just you and your body now, right?
Right.
There's so many other things involved. And I want to hit back on the insurance and the legal um, path. It is, you mentioned the word illusion. It's an illusion of protection that we have that through the judicial system. So,
Right.
without getting into detail, I know you have a story of your own, but what are there any protections at all if you were to take somebody to, like you took this man to court? What are protections that we can have in taking them to court, taking a person to court?
Well, that's the other thing is not only did I have to navigate a process through the criminal judicial system, it was the tenant's journey, but I followed it and participated in it as best I could for almost 21 months in two different layers. But then I did follow through on a civil process through our civil court system, not only with the tenant, but actually the property management company that I learned through once we found out what was going on, I learned that they didn't do any vetting with the tenant at all. So under that particular area, I also did that, and that is an illusion of protection, or an illusion of protection, because as much as I tried for 18 months to get at least somewhat financially whole on the damage that was done to my property and all the equity that I lost. Even through the management company, all I was met was with a very large resistance through their attorneys as well that exhausted me financially as well as really emotionally for over 18 months. And then I tapped out mediating for what I thought was pennies on the dollar for what I had lost, and it left me houseless. During that, during that time, and still today, I was not able to replace the home that I had or the equity. And the judicial process, to answer your question with the tenant, I do have a very substantial judgment, but he was caught 18 months after he fled his original criminal process, and he's serving a sentence. And it's an illusion because collectability is the final piece on that. If yeah, I may or may never ever see even a dime of it, let alone all of it. So that the jury's still out on that one, but it is an illusion of protection through the insurance industry. And I encourage people to sit down and have those conversations with their carriers, their agents, and find out what not only is covered, but what are the exclusions. And I haven't found any carrier yet that will add an endorsement for meth contamination specifically on a residential level, which is 1 to 4 units. But even at the commercial level, when somebody might be a building, an owner of a building that has 5 units or more, you still have to establish your baselines. That's a tip I give everybody is, if you have an ability to safeguard yourself with a special endorsement of some type, you still have to establish that it was meth free before once that policy potentially could go into place. And then even providing those preventative tools like a device to help protect your interest financially.
Yeah, it's locking something into place in the first place. So that's interesting that we acknowledge that it's a problem as a community. We have laws that say this is not okay, and you should make the person whole that you harmed, all of that, and then the insurance companies won't add the what did you call that? Not
An
not
en
a
an endorsement to add an
endorse.
endorsement,
Yeah.
against, contaminants and toxins, methamphetamine toxins falls into place with that. Mhm.
So I know that you're a voice, a leading voice in all of this work and getting more people aware of it. I love having you on the show to help bring that message further. What what other work can you do with our congressmen and our
Well,
state representatives
right.
that could bring this to a better place for us all?
Right. Great question. Thank you for that. We did present some legislation here in Colorado in our 2023 session, where were successful getting some preventative legislation passed. It's not what I had ultimately hoped for, and I'm still going to work to champion that. But taking a half a step backwards, Eva, is that I learned that as robust as Colorado legislation or standards are for meth toxins, meaning the standards that we have our tolerances are lower than other states. There is still a tolerance level that we allow for meth, and there are no disclosure requirements in a real estate transaction here in Colorado and almost every other state, if it's been remediated to the state standards. So people have to do their own due diligence. And I would, of course, it would be my ultimate goal to see a federal mandate that all properties, whether it's residential or commercial, be required to disclose that there has been previous contamination, even if it's been remediated to the state standard. And the bottom line for me is if it's so safe, then what's the big secret? Let people understand that this has taken place, like other types of contaminants that have been removed or remediated, like mold or radon, asbestos or lead. We cut them out and we still have to list them. So why not
Yeah,
methamphetamine toxins, especially if we know that um, it can't be fully removed from a property, so people can just understand uh, their risk tolerances, if any, and then make an informed decision best for them.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a lot. It can be very overwhelming if a person already has health conditions. Pre-existing
Right.
conditions are exacerbated by a number of things, and
Right.
this just seems like another huge load that has gone, at least for me, completely. I'm completely unaware of it.
Right, and I understand, after talking with you and learning more about what you do and helping people with toxic load and removing, taking people through a journey to remove those things through their body. I'm very sensitive to, because of my autoimmune disease that ultimately did affect my eyes. I'm very lucky, but there was a toxic load as well as stress levels that obviously contributed. Not There was no meth. My situation was not created from methamphetamine because I didn't live in the property then, but I couldn't live in it afterwards. And so I learned from you, based off of how you help people to remove these toxins. This is another level of contaminants that we do have to be aware of, whether we travel in short term areas and or we find out that long term it's in our spaces, or we're getting cross contamination through bigger buildings. And I mean, I hate to add fuel to it, the additional fire, but we're talking our vehicles.
Yeah.
We're talking maybe our dorm rooms. I've been people who have been traveling and had trouble sleeping and ended up finding meth paraphernalia, called me and said, "Is that why I couldn't sleep?" And there could be some contributing factors. So it's in a lot of our inside spaces, commercially and residentially. We just have to be aware of and try to protect ourselves for the purpose of prevention. So.
So if a person has done all of the work to go through the possible other sources of toxins and now they're hearing about this, where can they get that test?
My understanding is through their local health providers. There's some blood work that could definitely, uh, you have to specifically ask for it, like a lot of other things that they're looking for in the blood, but to find out if there are levels of methamphetamine contamination uh, in their bodies, possibly it's through blood work.
Okay. So that's for the individual, but then what about for the house? As you mentioned in
Oh, right.
specific.
For the home,
Yeah.
it's very state specific. Some
Okay.
states, again, about half of them have no regulations or standards at all, or rules or guidelines, or laws, and so they may have to go to a source where it's through the internet, looking for one of those methamphetamine toxin tests, and purchase several of them and do these swabs. But potentially you want to look for an industrial hygienist in your local community that could at least guide you, and then ask them, based, we have 50 states, and then of course traveling as well, where they could possibly, they can make some recommendations. And talking to more than one person. I talked to 12 individual companies before I hired one particular company to come in and test my home. And, they weren't the least expensive by any means, because I found that I had such a sensitivity to whatever was going on in that home. And it wasn't just meth. He was manufacturing high potency THC products, and there was other drugs on site. So there was a lot going on there. And I really had to hire some of the best in order to, find out what was going on and really what my options were. So.
Yeah. I suppose the level of severity and in that the layer that was left behind could be on clothing, could be on furniture. You could lose everything. Right?
Yeah,
These
right.
it doesn't come out in the wash, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, when it comes to closing, there is a standard. There's a protocol where you can wash it 3 times and not dry it in between, and you can wash it 3 times in order, with certain particular products, in order to get contamination out. There's certain pieces of furniture, hard surfaces that could be scrubbed, and things like that that you could potentially, salvage. In the case of my home, I did rent it out furnished, but a lot of our personal items were out in a shed in boxes on the property, but not in the home. So I didn't lose photos, but I did lose some commissioned artwork and things like that that could not be remediated. And I didn't want to take it into a new property to be cross contaminated. Mattresses, things like that had to. They all went into a dumpster. Um, and they don't get disposed of in a at least here in Colorado in some sort of special fashion of hazardous materials. But I really want to just impress upon one other very brief story is that my home when they I sold it fully disclosed, fully contaminated, believing that a builder would buy it for the beautiful lot that it was on because it had a beautiful view facing west of one of our 14ers, Mount Evans, and the people that bought it were unsuccessful in getting it to remediate to the state standards. So they were able to follow a different protocol called encapsulation, where you seal the meth in with an approved product from our state. And then they were able to, then 5.5 months after they bought it from me, they were able to sell it and then sell it undisclosed because there was the state standard that they followed. Every state's different, and they sold it for almost $300,000 more than they bought it from me. So they got all my equity, and like I said, they sold it undisclosed. So there's the reports were on the website for our state health department and things like that, but there's some other misconceptions. So I just invite people to reach out, either email or call, and ask questions of their health department, and getting that information and reviewing it, and being able to be an advocate for themselves and their loved ones if they have questions or not sure what they're seeing. Because it can be, daunting, and it's an unknown type of thing, so it's all very new.
So,
Right, right.
yeah,
I know,
it is.
I
It is. And
I
for
know.
our viewers, you can reach out to Kathy at the Meth Toxin Alliance.com website. Any last words of wisdom before we sign off for today, Kathy?
I'm just so appreciative of your platform today, Eva, and having me, bring light to what has been a dark topic that most people don't know about. And I just wanna reinforce uh the thought of test before you buy moving forward. Test if there could be a possibility, even if it's just a family visitor that came to stay for a month, get one of those online kind of tests or some of those and test privately, things like that. Call if you have any questions, email. Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance is all over the internet. And if there's something you'd like us to try to help you do in your community or your state to again champion some more legislation, love to think about how we can do to help. And if you have questions on the website, there's a link to the device now, so please reach out. And it's a very, I know it's a very small investment. If I would have had a device like that for myself in my property, it would have gone off early on in this process immediately, and then we may have not be having this conversation today or be just having a different conversation. But I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to share this with your viewers, and thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing your story and being brave and courageous enough, because it's heartbreaking to hear, but at the same time, you're being a champion to bring new standards to light. And we thought secondhand smoke was an issue.
Right, right.
So thank you so much for being here and being our guest today, being our leading lady. We really appreciate you. And it's been my sincere pleasure to be your host on today's episode of Leading Your Health. I'm Eva Venari, founder of the Elevate Institute, reminding you to question with purpose.